Hello, Bob. Thank you for saying yes to this little podcast, and I'm happy to have you. But maybe first you give a short intro to yourself, about you, and then we can dive into what made you the person you are today.
No, thanks for having me, Lear. So I'm Bob. I'm one of the co-founders of Weaviate. So we work in the infrastructure side of AI and the so-called vector database, which is also with the same name. It's also called Weaviate, and that's who I am. That's what I do, and that's just like my sixth year doing this right now.
Crazy how fast time goes by. I
Yes.
what I always like to do is go back in time and here go as far as you feel comfortable with and sharing the upbringing, the education part. I'm really interested in how founders became the person they are today. So take us with you, and I'm all ears.
Yeah. So that's of course that's a great question. I always need to think like where to start. So it's like the So I'm from the south of the Netherlands, and where I grew up and with my family and those kind of things. It was like thinking big or trying to build something big. There was not really something that was like you didn't do that. That even went as far as that's like even a saying in Dutch that along the lines of that you shouldn't think too big, right? Because if don't go too crazy, basically is what it says. Um, and what happened for me was the first time. So I'm born in '85, so that meant when I was 15, and I didn't grow up with the internet, but I was like very young when we got an internet connection. But funnily enough, I was working like making websites and that kind of stuff, very basic stuff. But as you do when you're like 14, 15 years old. But actually, something else that I discovered through the internet was music. So that led me to play music and at some point audition at a conservatory. But I was really young. I was like 16 or something. So you do
What
like
kind of
a
music?
so I fell in love with like very early on. I fell in love with improvised music and jazz, and particularly, and that was a way for me to it's very hard to explain. It's like when you're that age and you get absorbed in that kind of stuff. So I remember that I had a record from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I was constantly every time that I forgot the name of the song, but I was listening to a song, and then I went like fast forward to the guitar solo and it was like 30 seconds. And then I went back and I listened to it again. And I went back and I listened to it again. And I had a teacher who said, well, if you like that kind of stuff, then I have something else for you. And he gave me one of these burned CDs, right? With a record from Miles Davis. And that also had a guitar solo in a very similar style, but it didn't go on for 30 seconds. That lasted like 6 minutes, right? And I was like, wow, if this stuff exists, I want to, do that too. So I picked up bass guitar, and by that time, I also started my first software company when I was 15. This was all very basic stuff, but just people who needed websites. But the reason I'm zooming in on the music part is because if you want to study music, that's really hard and difficult, and you need to work very hard. So I did. I got accepted, and I actually finished. So I have somewhere laying around. I have like a conservatory diploma somewhere in the house. But what I've learned there is you really learn what it means to study and to work hard and to focus. Because I definitely could not do that when I was like 16, 17. And when I was done studying, I was still working in software, still running my own little company. I was just freelancing, and that went better and better and better. And then I decided like I actually like this a lot because I think that the time is not so much about it's not a time of like in culture. It's not so much the time of music, but it's more the time of technology. And I wanted to be part of the thing that was happening culturally. So that's why I shifted my focus more to software, and it kind of logically led to starting a company. but that's like a, that was not a, I was not too intentional about that. I just wanted to build cool things. And so that's a bit of the backstory. But I think so the point that I'm trying to make with all this is that it was early on, like 16, 17, actually because I wanted to study music, that I learned what it meant just to work hard. It's like you need to work really hard to get in there and to stay there. And I think that taught me some grit. So yeah, that's the background. Yeah.
I can't remember who said it, but it was something like, if you know why, then the how becomes easy. And it's not
Yeah.
necessarily easy, as you said. You do need to still do the work. You do still need to put the hours into it and the reps and for a very long period of time. But as you said, you were so immersed and so excited about this that it helped you to go through those hard times. And I think this is definitely one of the traits that I can see in the podcast over those episodes. Um, let's stay for 1 second here at this time, and because I always trying to understand what kind of parents do you need to have this kind of mindset. Is there something that, as you said, it came naturally to you because there is music and there's actually something you could do with music, or you can get into music deeper, but you actually need to put in the work. So this part, so you were drawn into it, or is that something that was taught to you? And here I'm asking because some of my guests have engineering parents, but some of my guests had artists or farmers as parents. And but what are the traits that are similar in all those different kind of upbringings that help you getting this kind of mindset? And here, if you don't mind, maybe you can ask that, answer that.
Yeah. Yeah. So my answer is slightly different. So it was not always fun at home. So then working is an escape out of
Mm,
that situation. So it's an escape, right? So it's like it's a way if you focus, if you concentrate. So that goes both for software and for music, because it's so abstract. It's like a different world where you can go, that you
into.
enter, that you go
Mm,
into, right? So it's like in my mind, the mindset of writing the flow state of writing software, or in my case, playing improvised music, is very similar in my mind. It's like it has the same. I don't know how that works, but it happens in the same region of my brain, and that was just an escape. So that was like a to yeah to escape
enter
that
something
reality.
else.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm. Thanks for sharing, even though that's very personal. The the transition from music to software is definitely something that is, I mean, I'm not 100% sure, but it sounds very unique. You got into technology because there's also a lot of technology, especially as you said, early 2000s. Everyone was downloading music. So you got into technology a little bit because it's different than going to a store and just buying a CD, right? You do need to download something. And then so there's, yeah, we have been in that age of technology, or growing up a little bit with the technology. But you said something that was very interesting. It came naturally to you to build a company then. Why was that? I can understand if it's a consequence of the things that you do, but why is that coming naturally to you?
Yeah, so first of all, as a preamble to that, I think there's just certain things in life. I don't know if that goes for every person, but it goes for me. So it's like um so I remember when we had at home, we had an old IBM computer, right?
Mhm.
And there was a piece of software on there. I was just running all these pieces of software that were on there just to see what it was like. Just it had like MS-DOS on it, right? And one of the piece of software was QBasic, and I didn't know what that was. And in the library, we had a book that was like it was in Dutch, and it was called QBasic for Kids. And I still remember what the first exercise was. It was you had to do something like input, and it was in Dutch, right? It was like input name, and then what is your name, and then the next line was like echo $ name, and then oh no, so hello, and then $ name. So I typed that in, uh, like in QBasic, I run the software, and there was like this intuition that you understand what it does. like as a kid. You go like, oh, I understand what it just did, right? And now I can come up with other things that it can do. And the same was with music. So I remember that I was very young and I was at a piano that you just understand the mechanism. It was not just a bunch of white and black keys and then you just go like, it was just I understood that, right? So, but there was also many things where I did not have that, but I had it with those two things. So what then happens is then, I don't know, it's like the inborn thing you have or something. Um, um, and then you start to do stuff with it, right? So you do things. And what's the first thing that's important, right? So that the change was not a shift. It was not a I didn't make a change. It was just a different focus. So it's like you like to make I like to make things, and then I use the tools that I master, that I know, and that just shifted to software, as in like because culturally, just imagine if we would have been living in the 60s and the 70s, right? It was like only music what people were talking about it that was like political influence that had like social influence, those kind of things. Today the exact same thing is happening with technology, so I just wanted to be part of that, right? So it was not a let's do something else. No, that just gradually grew into that. Now, and to answer your question, what then happens is that you can't do it alone, so you need to find people around you, um, uh, you know to help you in any scenario, right? And then very naturally, a company emerges. So you have a couple of people, and then it's a project, and then that turns into hey, you have a formal entity. So then it's called a company. So that just grows gradually. That's not a goal. It's just a means. It's part of going from A to B, basically.
Um, the the part about music and software, you having the tools you said to be able to create something, it's also a form of having power, right? It's also a form of I can now control and form things out of my mind into reality, both through music, as you said, via the piano, in using different parts and put them together in a new way that you created, and also then software part where you said, okay, I taught myself via the book and other things to have the tools and then being able uh, to come up and create new things that weren't there before, or you were able to transform the things that are there in the way you wanted it. Is that something that sounds about right?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. So it's about the act of making something, right? So
Mm.
you make something, and it was when I got a bit older, I got also interested in making things that I'm not good at.
Mm.
So it's like when I was younger, I found it extremely annoying. But then now I'm older, I might do things that I'm like, I'm not really good at this, but it's like I enjoy trying to make something with this. But that's what it's about. It's like if you make something and you release it into the world, that's cool. That's like feels good, right? It's like I made something, I contributed something, and that's a great feeling. So it's as simple as that.
It's nice that you say this because I think a lot of people are not realizing this, and I know what you're talking about because it took me a while to understand this. Well, also, there's two things to it. Uh, you can only become good at things when you're doing them, even though you're suck at them when you start doing them. But
Yeah.
also, so there's this part, right? But there's also the part you don't need to become good at everything, right? You can just do things and enjoy them. I think this is a very valuable lesson you're saying here. Is that something that, again, you came across, or somebody pitched it to you, or you read it, or you heard it, or is that something that you just felt through time?
No, that just came through time. So it's also like there was even when I was younger, there was like uh, there was a point in time that I thought everybody had that.
Mm.
Right? So there was like I was like, and these are the things I have, and then somebody else has something else. I thought like there was like how I thought about it. But it's like what's interesting is like So one of the things, for example, that I can't remember, both for software and for music, because it's such a long time ago, is that uh, how you, how I've bridged that learning curve. So there must have been a time that I didn't know what to do, right? Or how it worked, but I somehow bridged that gap. And I can't remember how I did that. But I do find it fascinating because the fact that I don't remember it means that it's trivial, right? So it's like
Significant,
not
yeah.
important. Yeah, and I find that interesting. And you sometimes see that now with, young people or, ch maybe children or adolescents when they're a little bit older. Some do things and they're just good at it. They have like this natural
Mm.
thing that they're good at, right? So, but you see that everywhere. You can see, yeah, you can go to a bar and then you have like two 16-year-olds who work at the bar or whatever age you need to work there, or like a coffee shop or something. And then some just are good at it and others not. It's a talent, right? It's a thing. And then you know that you can use it later in life. I find it fascinating. It's like but I kind of assumed that everybody has that. But apparently it's not true because some people say like, I don't have it. I still find it hard to believe. But do you
Yeah.
have it?
Yeah, I do think that you're right. I think it's just very hard to understand this because this is one part, understand this, and then following this as well, because
Hmm.
only talent is not enough. If you would like to become good at it, you do need to put in the hard work you were mentioned earlier on, right? So, and this bridge, closing that bridge in, hey, you're very talented, and some people may be telling you that you're talented. So the not everyone then understood, okay, to get better at that and to go further with that, I do need to put in the work. I think the majority of people then, oh, thanks, it's nice to get the compliments, but not having the urge and not understanding the concept of still needing to put in the work. But regarding the talent thing, I do think that it's hard to discover them. I remember talking to a friend of mine, and she was very, very good at um, biology and all these kind of things. And much later in life, she understood that she's very good with numbers and very good with also with languages. But
Yeah.
because she was very good on science topics early on, the language part was neglected because
Mm.
uh, so she's very good and talented at these kind of things, right? So and I do think that it's sometimes hard, and here maybe the parents or friends or surrounding is playing a huge topic in discovering those things that you're good at, right?
Mm. Yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah.
yeah, mm,
Yeah, no, but it's super interesting because it's a, you need to try to get the people into an environment where that can flourish. I know this story. I have a friend who is a teacher, or actually president of a high school in the Netherlands. And so in Holland, we have these different grades, right? So where you go after you went to high school, we have like, I think three or something, right? So and then university is quote unquote, and it's important. The air quotes are very important, seen as the highest. And you have like practical at the bottom, if you will. And again, quote unquote, because that's how it's presented in society, right? That university is the highest. And he told me this story about um, this girl that's like, she's like 15 or 16 or something, and she's on her path to university, but she wants to quit because she wants to go to a practical school because she wants to build furniture. And that's her passion. That's what she wants to do. But now you have teachers and parents who go like, no, no, no. Why would you throw away your future by just not doing this? And that just upsets me, right? When I think about these kind of things, because it's like that's like a young person, and you only live once, right? So you're not taking away that opportunity, right? So who cares if she tries it for a year and then goes like, I was wrong. Now you go back, right? Who cares? And then you lost a year. So what, right? But now she's losing that experience, right? So it's because that's probably not going to happen, right? So, and that's something I find problematic, right? So it's a thing in at least all of Western society. I'm not. so familiar with other cultures, how to deal with it, but I have a feeling that it's pretty similar or even more, right? Pressing, but it's like I find that problematic in the how we enable young people to discover what those talents are and how they can use them when when they grow older.
And especially in the time that we are in at the moment, or times, uh, the industry that I'm in, and that is mainly the robotics industry, you understand, and the AI industry that you guys are obviously in, understanding that looking into the future, 3 or 5 years, it actually makes more sense to make furniture by hand than
Hmm.
going to university, because the majority of jobs that are happening on in front of the display and the keyboard and the mouse will be automated very fast, right? So these are high paid, very high qualified jobs, and they will be gone, not in no time, but very soon, right? Or at least changed very dramatically. Let's say it like this. And people working with hands. My brother, for example, he's a mechanic, and he can build things. He when every now and then he sends me pictures of things that he just built, and it will take a bit longer for robots to get to this kind of level, right? So,
Yeah.
uh, but is she already on? So, did she already enrolled in university? So, is that chance gone or?
No, I think she's still in high school. So
Okay,
I'll see my friend in a couple of weeks. So I'll ask him what the latest is on that.
do
But
it,
I
do
find it
it.
fascinating. I think there's something more. I think more and more people are going to university, and my intuition tells me that that's not good because it's like you notice that there's like I like to call it academization
Yeah.
in society, and I'm rereading now one of the books of Nassim Taleb. I'm a big fan of his work, like
Hmm.
many, but so I think this may be the it's actually I do it through an audiobook, so it's like the fifth time. Well, I guess now re-listening it, or however you call that. And I was just going through this passage where he introduces this character called Fat Tony,
Mm.
and as um, a New Yorker, and he's the opposite of the academic thinker, if you will.
Mm.
And he gives this example that somebody asked the question to one of these academics and to Fat Tony of like, if I flip a coin 99 times and it always lands on tails, right? If I flip it now 100th time, how big are the chances that it will be tails again? And then, of course, the academic says like, well, it's still 50%, right? And Fatoni says like, no, it's less than 1%. He said, because if it falls up tails 99 times, sorry, 100% of 99 times, that means that the coin is loaded, right? So, and so it's street smart, right? And you learn that in different environments and different industries and different upbringings and different school systems and different cultures. So with that academization, we're losing a little bit of that street smart mentality I guess, that we need in my opinion, that we need in society.
I mean, the reason for that is mainly, I mean, because it is true partly, right? Through education, and this is the promise, right? Through education, you will be able to enhance and improve your life, because the majority of labor work is not paid as good as other work or academic work. And but coming back to your story, you said earlier on that working on things, being a freelancer, working on projects, and then it came. You grew into it, right? You said, "Yeah, now we're a bunch of people working on the same project," and then there's a necessity on making a company or an entity because there's insuring topic, there's a paying people topic, maybe renting someplace. Um, but there is still the difference between being part of that group, being an employee, and then the one who makes the decision, let's form a company. And so this is the reason why I have this podcast. The difference between the other 10 people in that room that also could have had just registered the company, right, and rent the place and signing contracts to people. But of those, it's just one or two people that actually make the decision to then form the company and being in charge, so to speak. And I'm always trying to understand what is it that it makes it that one or two or three people to make the decision and to have the guts, because you do need guts for that, right? You do need to. There's a risk, right? There's a reward, but there's also risk. And what was it? Was there a moment? Was it, as you said, gradually? It was just a consequence of the things that you guys were doing to then form the company. How was that for you?
So, I mean, it's a good question, right? So we were aware of the risk involved, but that was actually pretty manageable, right? So it's like and we did set a time. So we just like, we're gonna try this for X period of time, and then if that doesn't work out, then we're just gonna just call it a day, right? And then we had fun, we tried it, then that's it. I didn't find that too difficult, and I don't think the co-founders did either.
But why?
Um, Sorry?
But why? Because especially in Europe, especially in Western culture. I mean, the US are a bit different, but then you said you tried, it doesn't work out, we do something else, right? But there's still the failure. How do you say this in English? The stamp, the stamp, the failure stamp on you. As you said, it's just part of something, right? But the majority of people fear that so much, right? Being a failure, things are not working out. Um, but for you, there is something, right, that you decide, you know what, it is not that crazy. I mean, we tried a few months, maybe it does work out, maybe it doesn't, right? But this is from you speaking, and I try to understand, to put context to that. The majority of people fear that they would do everything and anything to not having that stamp on them being a failure.
Yeah, let's just double click on just specifically the last thing that you said. So here I just have to give my uh, I can only say this for me and not for my other co-founders, but because but I just don't care. I just don't have that. I don't have that gene. I don't have that. It's a um, that also goes the other way around. So I also feel very uncomfortable if it sometimes comes with like too much praise. I don't like that. So I don't participate in startup competitions and those kind of things. Then I just bow out of the opportunity. I also don't go on judges for those kind of things. I just don't do it. It's like it makes me feel uncomfortable. So it's the same. That's the same mechanism in me, right? So it's just not how I look at the world. It's a but what does play a role though is that what works very well for me, like in my psyche, is like if somebody tells me that I can't do something, that works very well. I don't know why. I was like, oh no, no, let's see. Right?
Hmm.
And so that works. But for the rest, I just don't have that. Um, what you said about failure, I don't have. That's not in my system. I don't have that. Let's go even further. I have it actually the other way around. So it's like um, and there was recently this book was written about the intellectual Bermuda Triangle. And it's like it's accounting, consultancy, and finance, I think. Yeah, those three. That young people when they come out of school get sucked into these industries, and then they're stuck in the triangle. And I like prefer to stay away from that. Am I making sense, or is this vague?
Yeah, and I mean, what I heard throughout the podcast, especially, I think last episode, the one before, um, it was someone who is now about to form, or he just formed a robotics company as well. They do simulation, and he said that from his batch was like 50 people, he was the only one not going into finance, not going into, because he was this is a prestige university and everyone has good grades and blah blah. But he said he then pursued a PhD and to go further into machine learning and all and math and all those things, but to pursue other things that you could do out with that. And then he got in contact with robotics. But he said that so many talented people, as you said, get sucked into that triangle because there's a lot of comfort that comes with it. There's a lot of wealth that comes with it, right? And prestige that comes with it. And he says a lot of people get a lot of talented people get lost there, right? In that, or sucked into that triangle. Hmm.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like even I have that when you with really big offices, right? So if you go to a really big office, like to a consultancy firm or something, I don't like to be there because you can it's in the air, right? You feel it, and I prefer to be amongst people who make stuff, right? So you create something of value, and it comes in the form of a product or a project or whatever you do, and that is what I enjoy. But it's like I just I I very much relate to what your previous guest said on the podcast. It's like and it also surprised me. So sometimes when I do something when I say something, well, for example, at university or something, then if I ask the students who wants to who's thinking of, starting their own company, it's just one, maybe two hands go up, but it's like minority, right? It's like it's a um, and I remember that at one of the universities where I was speaking was like the last time I spoke there, and there's a reason why it was the last time. It was just somebody sitting on the front row, and he fell asleep, and I'm like, I'm not gonna do this anymore. It's like I show up here, I tell this story in this room with like 200 people or something. There's like one or two hands going up on somebody who wants to be an entrepreneur. Somebody falls asleep on the first row. I'm done, right? I'm not going to show up here anymore. But this is a waste of time. So and you'll
But is
find these
it?
people at other places. Yeah.
But is it though? Because in my opinion, and maybe here I have too much hopes, maybe. But I think, especially now that I'm hanging around with very young people doing in the startup business, um, it's so refreshing to see how many are thriving, how many are really hungry and want to do things and are feeling comfortable in doing things, right? And here I have the feeling that um, sometimes you need just someone who tells you how to do things, right?
Yeah, but I mean, you know what the thing is? I think that there's this nice Charles Bukowski poem about writing, right? And it's something like you want to become a writer or something. And then he lists all these things. And he says, like, if you have to stare in front of your screen or your typewriter, in his case, for hours and nothing comes out, just don't do it. If you're afraid about don't do it. So he lists all these things why you shouldn't become a writer. And then the last sentence of the poem is something like, if you, and of course I'm paraphrasing because I don't know it by heart, but that he says like, only if it comes bursting out of you and you will die if you don't do it, then you need to become a writer.
Mm,
And I think that people who start companies and those kind of things, I mean, of course it's poems, so it's a bit dramatic, but the um, um, uh, people who want to do that stuff, that they'll stick, that keep these people, they stay around. Take for example, here music is an interesting example. Where, like take classical music, for example, that you see all these young people, like 15, 16, 17 years old, and they go to study classical music, like violin, that kind of stuff, right? That's fantastic. That just doesn't go away. It's going to be here 100 years from now. People are still going to do that, right? Same with starting companies, starting projects. It's just there's just a subset of people that just they can't help themselves. They just have to do it. So that's what makes me optimistic. What I'm just saying is like, if you want to find these people and help them, don't go to a university, but you're not going to find them there. right? They're at other places, right, where you can find them. And that was more my point.
Mhm.
So it's not about losing hope because it's just there's nothing to lose hope over because it's gonna stick around. It's not gonna go away, right? Um, um, so, um, but it's not these places, and it makes sense, right? If you think about it, because if you think about education, so what you basically try to do is like you somehow need to come up with a common denominator of like how you're gonna make people function in society, right? Probably it's not gonna work out if the methodology you use for that for every kid that you're trying to give an education that you're going to go like, oh, just, go for full artistic expression and start businesses and that kind of stuff, then, you know, that's just not going to, probably not going to work out, right? Because, for the reasons you just described. So it needs to be the other way around. These people, they need to find their way, but it's not, I don't think it's in the school system. I think it's outside of the school system.
I mean, we will see and look back on this time now because I think, especially with AI these days, you have the opportunity to, as you said, you need to come up with some common factors that are more or lessly touching 70-80% of people's capabilities and needs and skills. And now we're driving into a place where you can have your own very customized tutor, right? That is maybe not today, but in a few years, maybe able to extract and pinpoint the things that you're good at and teaching you those things even harder, but also understanding there's some things that you don't like, but that you might need to get a better understanding of the world. Maybe this is a good point of finding out a bit more about what you guys are doing and why you guys are doing this. Because as you said, there's some urge, some internal incentive that made you build this company and pushing the things out that you would like to push out. Maybe you can tell me a bit about this, and I'm asking a few questions here and there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So that goes back to when I started working with language models. This is for me 11 years ago now, maybe 12 even. It's like a long time ago. And no, it's 11 years ago actually. And what I saw, so it's important for people listening to bear in mind back then, LLMs, those kind of didn't exist, right? So the stuff we did was with single words, just individual words. And one of these concepts came actually about out of language philosophy. It was like, we can say something about the meaning of words based on the distance that they have in a sentence. And I always give the same example. I say like, if you have the word Eiffel, then chances that you'll find the word tower after it are greater than you'll find the word monkey, right? Um, and how do we know that? Well, we can just read text and count the words, right? Just like what's the distance between these words? The problem with that, or the challenge with that, is like if you build such a model, then it gets slower in a linear fashion. So it's like if you read 10 words, it's going to be twice as slow if you do it with five, well, and so on and so forth. So it was a concept, but it was not pragmatic. And because of the whole deep learning boom back then and through cloud, people trained models that rather than in a linear fashion try to calculate these distances to predict them, right? So, and that turned out to work pretty well. So what we basically did was we looked at the distances of words. And then if you take like, think about that just on a big sheet of paper, and you have all these words on there, then the computer was basically able to relate them to each other, but by itself. So if you then again had the word Eiffel, then it would say, well, words that are related to this are like tower, Paris, and that kind of stuff. And I found it absolutely magical. I was like, hey, this is like magic, right? So it's like it's beautiful. Um, um, and the idea was born out of that. Like, what if you now take like a paragraph that the model wasn't trained on, and we take all these individual distances and we calculate one distance to represent the paragraph? Can we then do semantic search? And that was how the idea was born. And that was working so-so. And that had to do with all kind of technical things, but that was working so-so. But the thing was that I remember that I was going around to conferences, etc. Somebody was so kind to recently, actually, somebody wrote this on LinkedIn. So I've seen one of your talks from back in the day, and that people were like, "What's this dude talking about?" And I'd be like, "So you make some kind of keyword connection?" I said, "No, no, 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 no. It's the model doing this, right?" And what then happened was the famous a paper was released, the Attention is All You Need paper that introduced the transformer. And the transformer kind of solved that problem of the the how the embeddings from different words were losing meaning the more words that you had. So now all of a sudden that technology that we were building and these demos that I was giving, just that went just it was in a way better, right? It was like became really good. And people started to slowly see like, oh, wait a second, maybe this is like the future, how we store data and how we retrieve data and those kind of things. And let me stop there, but it's that period in time, which was extremely exciting. And then I was like, because you feel you're on top of something, you say, this has to become something. This cannot not be something. It cannot not be, right? So, and and then you chase that and you try to figure out how do you tell that story and those kind of things. It's like a it's and that energy and that excitement. That's that's what was fueling me to do this. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's yeah how I did it.
I mean, what is interesting me here, because I like this kind of an adventure. You find something and you know this can lead to more, right? This is why the gold rush is always so addictive, because there's always the idea it could be more, right? Could be more. If I dig deeper, there could be more of it. If I dig somewhere else, there could be even bigger, right? But there's two things here before I go deeper into that direction. Um, but the bridge between making music and then freelancing and doing computer software and software or websites, but then going very deep into this direction. I really would like to somehow, maybe you can help me go over that bridge. How because you didn't study computer science, did you?
No.
Yeah. So, so from music to this is a very because making website is one thing, right? But this is something I really would like to understand, and maybe here my technical background is missing because then maybe for many people it's very obvious. But how did they came together? How did you ended up there, seeing those things and working on those projects?
And so the question is like how they overlap, or I'm not sure I understand the question. So
No,
yeah.
so if I imagine now you 15 years ago, and you just finished your degree in music, and you're working on the side, you're doing projects, internet, websites, but how do you end up in something that is so deeply technical? Because the majority of people that do websites for companies, right? You have a company XYZ, I do a website for you. You have like this is freelance work, right? But how do you end up? How do you find yourself in projects that have this kind of trajectory and being so deep into the technical things and so edgy? What was it that you were working on that put you in the position of that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So what I always say is like sometimes you have these people that if they for example if they hear like certain music that they see colors and that kind of stuff, right?
Hmm.
So I have that with shapes. So if somebody explains a concept to me and I don't see it, then I don't understand it. But if I understand the concept, then I see the shape, and then I can just plot that shape on everything. So if it's in this case with these embeddings in these machine learning models, the moment that somebody explained to me the concept of, or I didn't think somebody explained it to me, I just read it, right? So it's like we can say something about language because of the distance in the sentences, and we're just going to count the distances. That was super easy for me to comprehend and plot that on other things after I understood it. If in music somebody tells me, like, I don't know, dominant chord is like a major third, a minor third, and another minor third, then I know that an F dominant is F A C E flat, right? I just know that. It's like a, it's that's with these kind of things, and I'll never forget it. So it's like a you then get an understanding conceptually, and then I can see it, and then I can plot it on all these things. It's like I know it's an abstract and vague answer, but that's how it works in my mind.
No, no, but does that mean you came across something, you were working on something, then you came across about those topics, and then you thought, I understand that this is very interesting, so I look into it. Was that how you got into this project, into this niche?
Yeah, yeah. So it's like I was doing a freelance gig somewhere, and there was like a data science call that they had every month, I think, but I don't. It's a long time ago, so I don't remember. And I just dialed into these. It was completely unrelated to what I was working on. But I was interested in what was happening, and it was this piece of software was called, or this project was called Glove. Came out of Stanford. Somebody presented it. I was like, that's cool. So I looked it up at GitHub, played around with it, and then I just conceptually got it. And then I didn't do something, but for a long time, it was somewhere in the back of my mind. That's how I play around with it. I recently, just as a fun project, I wrote a piece of software that translates data into DNA strings. So I just ordered a piece of DNA. So it was in the mail last week. So I translated 1 kilobyte of data into DNA, and now I need to just decode it again. But I have like it's laying right over there, a little tube of DNA. You can't see it. If you look in the tube, you don't see anything because it's of course so small, but I play around with that, and then it's for fun, and that might turn into something. There's also that I do have a need to I want to turn it into a business. That feels like, I don't know why, but I like to do that. But so you play around with these kind of things. So these concepts, right, can also be in yeah, it's just to that goes back to the beginning of our conversation. I like to make stuff, right? But it's like a if you look at our business, right? So at some point we were just generating so much open source data, right, from users. And then you want to tie that to how you build up like your whole go-to-market engine. Now, laying out that puzzle, I enjoy doing that. I find it a lot of fun to make that. You see, so and I can give you a gazillion other examples. But it's like and then I don't understand it, I don't see it, but at some point I see it and I go, oh, now I get it. And uh, and then you try to execute on it.
So, this is fascinating to me. This is exactly the reason why I have this podcast to
Oh, well.
understand. No, it is. It is. I remember the first episode that I had was with someone who is working at for Intrinsic. So this is an Alphabet company, and they do simulation for robotics also. And he said that while he was doing his diploma back then, it was not bachelor and master in Germany, it was diploma. So one of the last days he was walking into a room, and there were people playing with robots and showing the robot projects. So, and because he came across and he saw that and he thought that this is fascinating, he got into robotics. So, and this is exactly what I'm saying, that you took this course, you thought, this is interesting, and then you read more about it, and then, a few years later, we're talking about you having a business now for 6 years doing that, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
this is I love that. And so, yeah, maybe you tell us a bit about what you guys are doing or what you guys are aiming at.
Yeah, so right now, it's a database, right? So it's called a vector database. So these things that come out of these machine learning models, these vector embeddings, you can store them in the database. You can attach your data to it, and it's used a lot to build AI applications, right? So that the information that you give to the models when they generate stuff based on your own data, it's open source. It's very focused on software developers. So it's like or AI engineers, how they're called nowadays. So it's very much focusing on the people who write the actual software to help them be more successful, right?
Mm.
And we sit on the data side, so we don't do the AI models, but we do what comes out of these models. That's what we store, and that's our company. That's what we do. It's open source, so it's like I mean, right now our database that we can see in our data is around 2.5 databases see the light of day every second all over the world. And that's exciting because if I go to a developer conference now or an AI conference now where developers are, I've been in doesn't matter if I'm in Berlin, in New York, in San Francisco. I've been in Seoul, I've been in Tokyo, all over the world. Developers who work in AI, you find people who know what we're doing and what we're building, and that's exciting. That's fantastic. So that's what we do.
So you actually made uh, I don't know how to put it into words, but when you were talking earlier about for you, it was not a keyboard, it was not like white and black keys. It was more something that you can build something with that, right?
Hmm.
And music, the same thing. It's tools to build something. So your I don't know if this is your opus magnum, but it seems like you also now enabled other people to do the exactly same thing. So you're now part of the AI stack. If people would like to build something, doesn't matter what they would like to
Yes.
build. I am, or you guys are offering tools to, you're enabling people to do just like that,
Yeah,
things
exactly.
with that.
Yep. So it's like it's the it helps other builders. It's a core piece of of the building block in the AI applications that people are building. So that's super exciting. And it's when I that's also the question when I meet people who know our technology or these people email me or ask me questions. The first question I always ask is like, what are you building? What are you making? Right? And people are making the super exciting things, right? And that's also the nice thing. This goes back to the beginning of the conversation. So this is the time of software, and now AI, but software in general, where people are. That's what they build, and that's what's influencing culture, right? But back in the 60s and 70s, it was different. That there was a different thing that said more like music and those kind of things. But today, that's in software. So it is about working with other builders in whatever, from a cultural perspective, is the big thing today that I'm interested in. And for now, that is software, and that's probably not going to go away. So I'm going to stay there. But that's what excites me. That's what I find interesting and exciting.
Earlier on, you said that in Dutch, you didn't say it in Dutch. You said you were trying to do translate it, but not don't think too big, right? And but also your urge of being part of zeitgeist of something that is happening not only here, not only there, that is happening around the world for everyone, right? And it seems like being part of the AI stack you fulfilled your dream of being part of the bigger picture, right? And yeah, congrats to that. I think this is a huge accomplishment, and I think if you go back in the time, especially if you say you have this urge of when somebody tells you you cannot do it, you need to do it. I think you're doing pretty good.
Oh, thank you so much. And I think you hit on the keyword just there. So it's like it's about the zeitgeist. It's like tapping into the zeitgeist. That's what it's all about.
Mm. I say thank you for your time. I really appreciate it that you took the time out of your busy schedule, and I'm happy that you said yes, and especially that we didn't talk too much about the company and everything, and but we really understood and unfold the story of Bob, and I think this is yeah always my goal. And maybe you can finish with what's coming for you guys.
So the what's super interesting right now is the you see the whole wave coming of just how should I say this? Of like regular developers, right? So for a long time, this sat in a niche for people who are very knowledgeable about AI and those kind of things. But the technology now opens up just for anybody to build these kind of AI applications. I'm extremely excited about that you see the democratization of this kind of
Mm.
technology is happening right now. That's very exciting. I like to help those kind of people. So I think that's the big thing that's coming right now, is that there's this whole wave of just, engineers, God knows where they're working and what they're doing, but they starting to build these AI applications with their technology too. And that's a lot of fun. and it's fun to help these people.
I always like when someone is actually aware of what and there's always a business behind that, and let's be honest. But I do like when I talk to founders, when I can feel and hear the enthusiasm, what's behind that business.
Yeah, but
I
there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with that, right? So you create something of value, and then somebody pays you for that. That's fine.
Yeah, no, it is, it is. Yeah, thanks again for being part of this, and yeah, we'll be looking ticking. Yeah, there's always something upcoming. I try to ask my guests who they can suggest for my next journey, and I'm interested in having a conversation after this one here because I think you are definitely someone who have this kind of interesting conversation upgoing, right? And I am very thankful that I was part of that.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me and asking you all these interesting questions.
Hmm. Then have a good day and take care.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.